I look back at kind of my cycling experience and things I'm proud of, I don't think road racing, any of those results would be super high on the list of what I consider like personal accomplishments.
Hello and welcome to episode 73 of the Virtual Velo Podcast, the show that bridges the gap between athlete and avatar, keeping it real in the world of cycling esports. Well, my co-host Chris Schwenker and I have got a fabulous guest lined up for you today, and I am really looking forward to this. Our guest, well, she is the definition of a modern day mountain goat, a polka dot summit sniper, both in the virtual world and on some of cycling's most historic and iconic climbs. She's an elite climber who holds over, yes, I am going to say that again, 10,000 climbing QOMs on Strava, including Ventoux, the Tourmalet and Alpe du Zwift. She's the reigning multi-time British and European hill climb champion, a two-time Everesting world record holder. Whether she's dancing on the pedals in the French Alps or laying down the watts on Alpe du Zwift, she does it all with style, grace, and a quiet tenacity that's made her one of the most fascinating figures in real and virtual cycling worlds. Today, well, we go deep on her journey from the pro peloton to esports podiums to QOM royalty and everything in between. Chris, I'm looking forward to this, and I bet you are too.
Oh, I sure am. And it's really appropriate that we have a world-class climber on the show with us today, because I'm sure that you know this is our one-year anniversary together. We've done 31 shows, and with you as my co-host, the Virtual Velo Podcast has reached new heights. And I'm excited for the future, and also excited to learn a lot more about our guest today.
Well, Chris, it's been an absolutely brilliant 12 months, and here's to looking forward to many, many more Virtual Velo podcasts. And I'm Illi Gardner. Thank you so much for joining us to celebrate 1 year. It's fabulous to have you here today.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, and congrats on the anniversary.
Oh, Illi, thank you so much. Let's just start, shall we? Because not all of our listeners will be familiar with you. Where are you from? Where do you live these days? And what's your day-to-day life like outside of cycling?
So I live in Cardiff in Wales, and I work as a visual effects artist, so film and TV post-production. I've worked remotely for the last few years, which has allowed me to kind of travel a bit, and yeah.
That explains the YouTube videos.
No.
And why they are so good. They are brilliant. They are
Thank
so
you
good.
very
I
much.
do like them. And both Chris and I, like many others, love following your rides on Strava and, of course, the videos on YouTube that we just mentioned. But it looks like you've been away from I was going to say the UK, but let's go Cardiff and Wales. Where are you right now, and what brought you to that stunning part of the world?
So I'm in France, just right by Nice, and my mother actually works out here, so quite ideal for me. I can come and visit for a few weeks at a time. Yeah, so I'm trying to make the most of it before she gets sick of me. But yes,
well, I'm sure there isn't a single QOM within a very large radius that's safe from you there. I know you've described cycling as more of a hobby these days, which is, I know that's kind of ironic. It's a bit of a tongue-in-cheek way to describe what you're doing. It's obviously much more than that, and you're extremely successful at it. But that wasn't always the case. Can you take us back to your professional road career? Like, when did you turn pro, and which team were you with? What was that like in the beginning?
Yeah, so I was never like a proper professional. It's a bit, so I was on a UCI team, but never got an income from that. So I used to road race. I started as a teenager, and then when I was at university, I continued doing that. Raced quite a bit in Europe. And I guess I was, doing pro races, but not to the extent that it was a career. I was kind of just seeing how it went for a few years while I was still at university. And then once I finished university and had to kind of enter the real world, I had some decisions to make, and decided to not pursue it as a career.
Speak about university. I noticed that a lot of your early races were in the States. Did you go to uni in the States?
No, so actually I was born in England and then grew up primarily in California, which is where I started cycling. So I lived there from when I was 7 to when I finished high school. When it was during the last few years of high school, I started road racing it was a great area for cycling out in Northern California as well. And then I moved back to the UK. So yeah, the year after I finished high school, took a year off and then started university in Wales. And my family also moved back to the UK then.
So you're kind of downplaying your professional career, and I certainly understand what you're saying, but you had some pretty good results. A fifth at the 2018 Tour de Féminine, which is a UCI 2.2 stage race, which was won by the American Leah Thomas, a pretty big name in cycling. And I believe you were racing unattached at the time, so that kind of explains how you were kind of privateering there. Was that one of your proudest moments in your career, or are there other results that hold more significance for you?
Yeah, so I think I was on a British team for that race. But yeah, that's probably my best road result race. But when I look back at kind of my cycling experience and things I'm proud of, I don't think road racing, any of those results would be super high on the list of what I consider personal accomplishments. But just in a road cycling aspect, that was probably the highlight. Yeah, road cycling, I struggled with quite a lot, just in terms of I didn't enjoy it hugely, and positioning and all the things that come with road racing. So I never felt like I wouldn't say reached my potential, but I don't know. I kind of go on a different path. So yeah.
I certainly can understand that. It's not for everybody. What were your challenges? What prevented you from enjoying it? What prevented you from excelling at that, which certainly is a huge skill that is not for everybody?
Yeah, obviously there's a huge amount more than just fitness, the actual cycling part. There's so much in terms of positioning and just being able to ride in a pack. And that's something I always really struggled with, even after doing it and racing in quite big races for 5 years. I was just always kind of at the back of the peloton, too afraid to move up. So I think a big part of it was kind of balancing the risk taking, which is necessary to succeed in road racing, with my desire. I just lacked a lot of the guts, I think. And yeah, after quite a few years of not making much improvement in that, I was like, well, not really getting anywhere, and I'm not enjoying it hugely either.
So you then made the decision to transition away from cycling, which doesn't really seem like it was a dream of yours. It was something you tried. And
yeah, I never really considered it as, the whole time I was doing it, I couldn't really get into the mindset of imagining myself making a living and doing that as my occupation. And the reason I stopped was also it was during COVID where I started kind of enjoying cycling more when I wasn't road racing. And then actually 2021, which was kind of as racing was starting back up again, I actually started finally getting some results on the road, within the UK scene, finally kind of getting the hang of it a bit more. So it seemed a bit of a strange decision to stop racing when I did, but yeah, I just wasn't enjoying it. And also I had to, try and get a job in real life. So
yeah, real life does get in the way. And so does the pandemic. That was certainly a challenging time for everybody. But it did allow people to kind of focus on other pursuits. I noticed that in 2021, you set the women's Everesting world record. And then back again in 2022, where you lowered it to 8 hours and 3 minutes, which is just, I've done the V Everesting a couple of times. Yeah. It's unfathomable. You're also the reigning 3-time British and the European hill climb champion. You have over 10,000 Strava climbing QOMs, which many would argue would make you one of the best pure climbers in the peloton. Now, you had to make a conscious choice to do that. What was your impetus? What was your motivation for making that change?
Yeah, so it was during that 2020 year where I wasn't racing. I actually got a lot fitter, just not having to worry about going to races or any kind of road racing fitness. I was just going out, riding hills. I found what I really love about cycling, which was going up hills. That was also the year that my mum moved out to France. So it's kind of the first opportunity I had to ride some big proper mountains. And yeah, I really fell in love with it. And when I did return to road racing, I had a lot of fitness. And it did help in road cycling a lot, but I kind of found the stuff I like doing. And every time I was at a road race, I was just thinking, I'd rather be going up some hills right now. So yeah, decided to follow the fun part of it.
I'm sorry, but I'm just giggling here because I can't believe anybody is actually saying to me, I'm following the fun, I'm riding up a mountain.
It's great.
That's brilliant. I love it. And it's funny, isn't it? Everybody finds their own niche and their own passion in the world of cycling, and you have obviously found yours.
Thank you. More of a competitive outlet for it, definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting that, isn't it? Hill climbs. I mean, the UK has a strong hill climbing sort of tradition, and that, and being the British champion. Now, interestingly, more than one British hill climb champion races in esports and is very, very competitive. So it's an interesting combination, Eiley.
Yeah, I think it's because you can't hide from kind of the pain or the physical exertion. They're quite similar in, a lot of aaspects, I think.
Yeah, they are. So should we talk a little bit about that impact that you've had in the virtual world? And, you were, one of the very early adopters on esports racing. When did you first jump on board and think racing esports is a really good thing for me? It's something that I really want to do. What drew you into it?
Yeah, I think I started Zwifting in like 2017 and just did, the odd race throughout the years. This was before there was much verification and things like that. But I did some of the earlier kind of high profile races, like British. There's the national championships in 2019, I think. So I did the qualifiers, but was unfortunately unable to go to the live finals because I had a road race and probably would have preferred to be the Zwifter. I really enjoyed e-racing even before it was the huge sport it is now, just because you didn't have to worry about any of the things I hated about road cycling, such as crashing, positioning. It was just, a hard physical effort. And of course, there are lots of tactics involved, and there is a certain knack to e-racing, but a lot of it was also just a physical effort. And I always really enjoyed that, and then just kind of got more involved in the races. I think the first Premier League series in 2020, end of that year, I think. Just really enjoyed the weekly competitive outlet, especially when there was a lack of other real life races when I was still doing that.
Yeah, your esports resume is no joke, really. You talk about 2017. I think you raced the pro-ams in 2017, so really quite an early adopter to racing at that level. You won those British Championship qualifier events in 2019. You placed 20th at the 2022 UCI Cycling Esports Worlds. And then obviously that dominant win in 2024 at the Zwift Games Climb Championships on the Alpe du Zwift. This year's Zwift Games, for those of us watching, felt like it was a bit of a shift for you. You were really out there animating every race, not just the climbs. Was that a strategic move from you? Was that something you deliberately went out to do?
Yeah, last year was pretty my dream kind of race up Alpe du Zwift. And this year's courses weren't quite so climb focused. Even like the climb stages they kind of ended in sprints. But last year I just did the climb event, and this year I thought might as well make the most of it and just do all of them. Even though I didn't realistically think I had much of a chance, I thought, well, might as well try and kind of animate it and just have some fun with it. And it was ridiculously hard, a lot harder than I anticipated. But I really enjoyed kind of just getting involved, even if I regretted some of the attacks I made at times.
The quality of that peloton is just amazing, isn't it?
I can't believe how much it's ramped up. It's always been really hard to compete at the top in Zwift races, but I think within the last year or two, it's just accelerated hugely, and it's brutal.
So you talked about animating the race there. Did you go in with a goal of placing high in the overall standings, or did you just want to see what would happen if you changed your normal tactics of climbing?
A bit of both. I think in hindsight, maybe I should have been thinking about the overall a bit more. I was a bit silly in the sprint races. But I was hoping that they'd pay off. I still had a bit of, it wasn't just about kind of messing it up and being silly. But I was like, the epic race was quite a good course that suits me. So that was in the back of my mind. I wanted to be a bit more sensible on that stage.
So you talked about one of the reasons why you came off the road. Does the nature of cycling esports allow you to be more aggressive than when you're racing than maybe you would have been on the road?
Yeah, I think so. In road races, I was basically only comfortable if I was trying to get a breakaway, which is pretty difficult to do, especially as all the courses tend to be flat and end in bunch sprints. Whereas, of course, e-racing, you don't need to get your arms out and battle your way through the peloton. You can just attack by riding harder. In all senses, it's a lot easier to, well, I wouldn't say it's easier to race. It's a lot more physically demanding. You don't need to think about the consequences of things quite as much at least from a safety perspective. And
Yeah. So we've talked about Zwift quite a lot. Have you tried or raced on any other platforms?
Yeah, so I did the women's tour in 2020 on GT. So that was the first non-Zwift race I did. And I've done quite a bit of Ruby racing, just because Ruby you can ride up replicas of real climbs. But none of those are like verified or the level of the Zwift races we do. I've never raced on my whoosh, which is obviously a really popular one at the moment. And what other? I've tried out like Indie Velo and most platforms out there, but primarily my racing's been on Zwift, with the exception of Ruby, which I just use for kind of replicating hill climb efforts.
You really are showing a true passion here and dedication to a certain type of cycling.
Yeah, just 50 minutes straight uphill races.
Yeah, I think maybe you've got something in common with the cycling esports world champion, Jason Osborne, who, if he had his way, everything would be about 60 minutes uphill as well. So actually, do you know, it's really interesting. You know, you've talked about racing on Zwift, and obviously, you know, through those 2025 championship races as well, prize money is now really available within those races, and you've earned, you know, really good this year. You know, around £10,000 in prize money over the past 2 seasons. Does that motivate you, or is it actually more about a way to fund your broader cycling adventures?
Yeah, currently for me, it's not about the money from it. Obviously, it's always an incentive when you see like the races advertising it. But yeah, for me, it's kind of still my main focus is out on the road riding up hills. And I just enjoy mixing it up with virtual racing.
Okay, so I'm thinking, let's just switch gears a little bit to that exactly what you have just said. And you talked about riding on the road, outdoors, up hills, really. QOM hunting on Strava. Okay, so Chris mentioned at the top of the show, you know, over 10,000 climbing QOMs on Strava. Do you know the exact number?
Oh, no, I'm not sure.
Ah, well, there we go. Last time we were taking a look, you were leading the leaderboard with over 10,000 climbs on QOMs, ranking 5th overall across all segment types, including men and women on Strava. It's a phenomenal record and ranking, Illi. You know, and when you talk about riding up hills outdoors, you're not really just talking about riding up local climbs, are you? You're talking about major hill, I'm going to rephrase that, major mountains, not major hills. So Mont Ventoux, the Col de Tourmalet, the Col de Madeleine, and the Madone and Alpe du Zwift, which, by the way, your QOM time wasn't broken by Demi Vollering during that dramatic stage 8 of last year's Tour de France Femmes. So you are putting in some phenomenal performances outside. Does holding these iconic QOMs, is that what motivates you, or is it just an absolute love of riding uphill?
It's definitely a bit of both. It's definitely not all about the Strava QM, because I'm aware that most people don't really care all that much about it. Like Demi Vollering's not looking at her Strava time. But it's definitely a big motivator just to kind of dig that extra bit deeper. But I really like pushing myself and exploring new areas and discovering.
So when did you decide to pursue QOM seriously? Was it an actual decision that you sort of sat down and made?
Oh no, definitely not. I think I remember getting the Madone QOM back in, it was one of the first mountains I did. And that was when I realised that I might be able to try and go after some more. But no, it wasn't a conscious decision. Even before I was kind of a climber, I used to enjoy going out, and climbing's always been a part of cycling I've been drawn to. It just took a while to get okay at it. So I came from cycling from like swimming and running. So naturally I had the fitness, but none of the skills involved in cycling. So yeah, I've always, even back when I was a teenager, I'd like look at Strava times and keep the list of my own personal times up the local hill. And then it's just that I wasn't really capable of getting QMs until a few years ago.
Well, okay, so take us through a little bit here. You said the first one was the Madone. What does QOM, I'm going to call it hunting, actually look like for you? How do you choose the next climb? How do you decide where to go, which ones to target, what to do?
Oh, a lot of it depends on kind of the location I've planned for a trip. there's definitely like a list of iconic ones I want to ride at some point in my life. And then usually means there's a few others in the area that I have a go at while I'm there. Yeah, just like with Alpe d'Huez, I've been there a few times, and then obviously Madeleine's quite close and Galibier. So yeah, just naturally try and do those as well while I'm there. But a lot of them, like realistically, you can't do complete max optimized efforts day after day. So a lot of the times I'm riding up climbs, they're definitely not kind of the best effort. But I always try and go as hard as I can just because it's fun.
So for me, if we go back to Demi Vollering, so she's done stage potentially before she gets to the final mountain. I've done 3.5 hours or 4.5 hours of riding in the peloton before she gets there. What do you, Illi Gardner, do before you get the base of the target QOM?
Usually a really bad warm up. Obviously I haven't been generally riding for hours, which is why you can never compare road race segments and just one-off efforts. I'm definitely well aware it's a completely different thing. But yeah, usually I just kind of warm up for 20 minutes and then try and ride up it as hard as I can. Although that's only for kind of the main ones I'm going for. A lot of the smaller ones might be incorporated into like a bigger ride. But yeah, nothing crazy.
No, well, nothing crazy, she says. I do a 20-minute warm-up and then I go and ride up Alpe d'Huez. Well, talking about that, I mean, there must be a lot of planning involved. You've just mentioned that you've got a list of QOMs that you're targeting or you would really like to ride in the future. I mean, there must be some travel, some logistics, some planning involved in all of this.
Yeah, there is quite a lot of planning to try and optimize and fit in as many climbs as possible whilst also not being completely knackered from like traveling or anything like that. Yes, like when I did Ventoux, that's actually, I think it's about a 3.5 hour drive from here. So I've usually just done it in a day trip from Nice. But yeah, if I'm going to an area, it's difficult because it's somewhere for like 5 days, you obviously want to fit in as many climbs as possible, but except that you can't do a perfect effort of every climb. So usually there'll be like one kind of main one, and then the rest of the time is trying to get the balance between doing the others. And some of the regions you're in, there's quite a lot close together, so the logistics aren't too difficult. Obviously, like Ventoux, there's not many other major ones around. It varies a lot based on the location you're in and how long you have there.
So out of all those QOMs that you hold, is there one that you're especially proud of?
Probably Alpe d'Huez. That was one of the earliest ones I did as well, shortly after Madone. And I've gone back to the area, I think 3 times. I did the Haute Route Alpe d'Huez, which was a 3-day kind of, not race, but just around the area. And since that was the first one I got, and it was kind of the first climb I ever heard, like before I was even a cyclist, like Alpe d'Huez was the only mountain I'd ever really heard of. And I remember like comparing our local climb and working out how many times I'd have to do it in order to reach the elevation of Alpe d'Huez. And I was like, oh my gosh, how is there a climb that big out there? It's quite special to go and get that one. And I've improved my time a bit over the years, but it's always good to go back to.
Is there one that you really want to do but you haven't done yet, or one that you've tried and not quite made the top of the leaderboard?
I did Mont Ventoux from Seoul, which is quite a draftable side. I think they raced up it. I missed that one. It's a little bit sad. But I think in terms of the climb I haven't done, Angleroo is probably the top of the list. I think there used to actually be a race up it, but I don't think it's held anymore, unfortunately. But that just sounds like my dream climb, the brutal, steep gradients. So I'm hoping to get over there sometime. It'll take a bit of planning, I think.
You mentioned drafting. And of course, you also mentioned that Demi Vollering will be racing 3 or 4 hours before she gets to a final climb. But it seems like there could be a trade-off there because there is a speed factor with drafting that would certainly affect the QOM and that you don't have as a solo effort. And I think I've read you commenting about that as well. What is your feeling about that?
Yeah, I mean, in a race, they can't not draft, of course. And there is quite a big benefit that comes from gradients under maybe 7%. But generally, I prefer steeper climbs as well. But yeah, some people do kind of go and get paced with the intention of getting QOMs, like whether that be in a pack or by men, which, I mean, for me, that's not I don't think I would take much joy out of doing that, even if maybe I would go faster with a lot less effort. For me, I'm just, want to get the best out of myself, and I'd rather go a bit slower and not draft than draft, because at the end of the day, it's just a Strava QOM. It's just, nothing too serious.
Does it add more weight to your QOMs because you get them solo?
Yeah, I think so. I do feel a bit
effect?
Satisfied. Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm fascinated by your motivations to do this. It's obviously unconventional in the way that many people think, but there is and are athletes out there that have parlayed their Strava hunting into fairly lucrative endeavors for themselves. Comes to mind is Phil Guyman. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but after his time in the Pro Peloton came to an end, he started what he calls the worst retirement ever project. And he goes around to all these different climbs, and he has a YouTube channel, which I think has 144,000 subscribers now. He's written several books. He's witty and charismatic and extremely talented, and several other business ventures that have stemmed from the concept as well. In a lot of ways, your cycling quote unquote hobby that we know is clearly more than that follows a similar arc. Have you received any sponsorships or financial backing for your QOM pursuits?
No, I haven't. It would be quite nice to be able to just go up hills all day, but at the same time, it's kind of nice to have it as a separate thing, I think, from the rest of life, even though at times it is a bit intense and tiring. I think I, in some ways, appreciate it more, and it's a bit of a separate thing. But I, at the same time, it would be pretty great to be able to make a living off of just doing what I enjoy doing. I don't think, it'd be quite difficult.
It would be like a tremendous drain on your resources to travel all these different places, and it obviously takes a lot of time. This is all self-funded just for the love of it, for the status of having these QOMs, or just the pursuit of that?
Yeah, I mean, everyone's got weird hobbies, I guess, and I mean, I'm just enjoying it while I can as well, because who knows how long I'll be able to kind of keep doing it.
It's fascinating how these third-party apps are revitalizing the careers of a lot of cyclists. Just like cycling esports is, we have a lot of older riders who, once they've run the course of their careers, come to cycling esports and do quite well. Now, Emma mentioned your YouTube channel, which is really quite brilliant. Your effects and things, some of the best videos I've ever seen on YouTube.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yeah, you have 1,000 subscribers, not in the stratosphere of Phil Guyman, but where does that fit into the picture? Is that something that you're trying to build out?
Not really. I don't know if I'm cut out for being a YouTuber. I do that kind of just for a bit of fun, and I do enjoy making them. Just to kind of share the climbs I do, and Zwift things as well. I find it quite embarrassing though. Maybe I'll try and keep making them, but
I, for one, are a big fan, and I think that you certainly, seriously, I wouldn't say it if it wasn't true.
Oh, thank
Your
you.
videos are great. They really are. They're compelling. You're extremely relatable, and the visual effects, which we now know that's your job, it's actually quite clear because they are fabulous.
Oh, thank you.
Now, asking a broader question, we spoke about these third-party apps like Strava and Everesting. Do you think you'd still be going down this path of seeking out the iconic climbs throughout Europe and the world and conquering them if these apps didn't exist?
Well, that's a good question. I don't want to say no, but it's probably true. Just because, I guess like just having the ability to find these climbs and things like that is also a big part. Just like seeing the Strava stats, and that's an interesting one. I haven't really thought about it. But I think I'd like to say no, because I do really just enjoy traveling, getting out there in the mountains, and it's not just about seeing the time on Strava. Difficult to say actually.
How important is it that your name is on the top of the list?
Oh, well, if it's on the top of the list, I've had a terrible time, then what's the point? So
that's a great answer.
Yeah.
It really is.
Wow.
And you mentioned earlier that some people don't really acknowledge Strava. They consider it hollow victories. Does that change the way you approach it?
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of Strava haters out there. That's always going to be the case with anything. And I mean, I don't know. I just kind of try and ignore all that.
Illi, do you think of yourself as an adventurer or as a competitive cyclist?
That's difficult.
Because just listening to you there, when you're talking to Chris, it almost sounds like, you seem to have, your motivation sounds a little bit more like, you're an exploring adventurer who happens to be doing it on a bicycle rather. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how you see yourself, but it's just really interesting.
I think adventurer, but with a level of comfort, mainly just limited to riding at mountains. But yeah, I'm very, very competitive, and I'm definitely sad if I don't kind of get the goal I was going after. But yeah, I really just like, I guess my version of kind of exploring the world is just doing it through finding mountains to go up. And so like we said before, that it's a lot of resources going into this, but it also kind of gives me a reason to go somewhere, go to an area of the world and not just cycle there, but also other things while I'm there that I wouldn't have a reason to go to otherwise necessarily, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It almost seems to me like you're driven more by the challenge than the result of the challenge.
Yeah, I think so. Although, yeah, like I said, I am very competitive.
She still likes the result.
I still like the result, yeah, when it's good.
Well, several riders have been discovered through their Strava QOMs. It's certainly, I'm sure that what you've done has turned the heads of certain, principals at teams along the way. You're still young. You're only 25. It's not that far-fetched, and there have certainly been several successful athletes who have been discovered this way. Is this something that you have on your radar? Would you give it a shot again?
I don't want to never say never. But yeah, I've had a few potential opportunities and I've kind of still stuck to the same route. I might massively regret it one day, probably will. But I'm still pretty convinced that I don't know if I'll be a successful road cyclist because it's so much more than just riding hard up mountains.
Yes, that's certainly an understatement. Can you tell us about those opportunities with big teams, or can you give us a little bit of the insight into that?
No, I don't want to say too much, but it was something that I'd have probably been jumped right on board with a few years ago, and I was still doing quite a lot of road cycling. And yeah, I probably kicked myself for not kind of following some of the opportunities. But yeah.
Illi, you talked about Alpe du Zwift and that was one of your favourites, or the one that you were most proud of in terms of the QOMs. You've obviously also won the Zwift Games Climb Championship on the Alpe du Zwift. So both in the virtual and in the real world. I am going to ask you the question, which one was harder?
I'll still say probably real life.
Hey.
It was incredibly, incredibly difficult on Alpe du Zwift. I think it was probably quite a similar effort, but without the real world, things to deal with. Yeah. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? I actually have your efforts in front of me. I can tell you exactly what they were. And it is really interesting. So are you all right if I do this?
Yeah, of course.
So on Zwift, it took you 37 minutes and 16 seconds. So that was 253 watts or 5.8 watts per kilo. And you weighed in at the time at 43 kilograms. Outdoors, it's 42 minutes 36 to take the QOM, and you rode at 244 watts, which is 5.4 watts per kilo, and that day you weighed in at 45 kilograms. So 3 minutes faster, that was outdoors, than Vollering and Madone. If anybody's interested in what the pros did, we won't worry about them. But for me, what's interesting is you say outdoors felt harder, even though the Alpe du Zwift indoors still was a hard effort. What are your thoughts about, being able to produce more power indoors on the Alpe du Zwift than outdoor? It's interesting. Those stats are really interesting. What's your take on them?
Yeah, I don't think my weight was correct on the outdoor one, but the indoor efforts was, power wise. I think the main difference with hard efforts on the trainer is that you can really force the most out of yourself without having to worry about literally just steering and being in a good state to ride on the road. There's lots of you're out there on the real road and there's cars and there's parts of the climb where you have to go through under a tunnel, and there's all these little factors that you have to constantly be aware and adapt around. Whereas indoors, you can kind of just focus on the physical, pushing other pedals. You don't even need to look up at the screen. So
that's very true. You don't have to look where you're going, do you?
So I think that's the main kind of reason it's sometimes not always able to get out a better effort indoors.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Well, both of them absolutely phenomenal efforts and absolutely brilliant riding. The final climb of the Zwift Games, this year, the Epic. One of the things that's quite interesting, because like Chris was talking about earlier on your YouTube channels, I have watched a lot of your videos. This year, on screen, you were out of the saddle almost the whole time on that final climb. Was that part of the plan the differential between riding indoors and riding outdoors? Because when I watch your YouTube channels, you're sat down at a very steady cadence on those outdoor climbs. So did you adjust deliberately to that style indoors, or was that just a natural response to riding indoors versus outdoors?
Yeah, I think I kind of experimented a bit with it and then it became natural. I was almost trying to get myself to not do it because I was like, I don't know, I don't want to start riding what's slightly unnatural and maybe doesn't translate to the road. But yeah, I do find that naturally I ride at a lower cadence indoors, and yeah, I definitely wasn't thinking about it much up that climb. It just kind of happened. Not sure it was the best way to ride. But yeah, I do ride at a much lower cadence when you can really feel that resistance on climbs, especially indoors.
Do you have an ideal climbing cadence or an ideal climbing style that you find works best for you?
Is this outdoors or?
Well, either.
Yeah.
I mean, outdoors, obviously, all of those QOMs, you've had an awful lot of opportunity to test a lot of different styles going uphill, I imagine.
Yeah, I think my cadence is probably in like the lower end of what would be typical for road cycling, so probably around. And I usually don't stand up too much outside, mainly because it's not very aerodynamic, and also when I get really tired I just end up slumping down. Like I don't be wasting energy throwing my bike around, but I like quite steep climbs as well, so my cadence generally tends to drop quite low on those, and I think that's maybe lower cadence comes a bit more naturally indoors, because when I'm at home in the UK, a lot of the climbs I ride up are like 15%, so I'm pretty used to riding at 60 RPM, 65 RPM, which has made probably contributes to a lower cadence indoors as well.
So still speaking about Zwift, but in a real world fashion, when you heard the pros be racing up Alpe du Zwift last year during the 2024 Tour de France Femmes avec Zwift, I have to put the avec Zwift part. I get upset when the announcers don't, because Zwift deserves a lot of credit for sponsoring the race and for transforming the way that we consume women's cycling. You told Cycling Weekly that you expected that your crown might fall. It didn't. In fact, it was never in jeopardy. You still had a 3.5 minute cushion when the stage concluded. Were you watching that epic stage to see how you would measure up?
I'll have to admit that I couldn't watch it, 'cause I know I said I didn't care that much about the QOMs, but I did, because especially outdoors is one there's not many climbs out there I've kind of done and thought that was the best I could do. A lot of them I've like not felt great or messed up pacing or something like that, but that was, since it was kind of my most prized one, a little bit nervous. Yeah, I was quite happy, even though I do understand they're not comparable.
Well, I guess that's up for debate, certainly. Then let me ask, the stage is over, you're comparing your times and you realize that your QOM is safe. Demi Vollering was the winner of the race. Kasia and Madone, they both were several minutes behind you. Actually, they weren't even really close. What did you say to yourself then?
Oh, I was just pretty happy, I guess. But also, I mean, it was an incredible... I did go and then watch the stage, and it was an incredible race in its own right, which was enough to distract from any silly Strava QM.
It was an incredible race, that is true. Now, this year, the Col de la Madeleine is the Queen stage of this year's tour. You hold that one also. What do you think of your chances of keeping it?
I think they might be going up the other side that I did, but they'll definitely take that one because I was pretty tired, and they'll fly up that, I think. So, yeah, well, that one's not safe.
So that leads me to the next natural question is, if it does fall, will you then try to reclaim it?
I won't go out there just to try and reclaim it, but if I'm in that area again, maybe if I'm checking out some other climbs, then might not be able to resist the attempt.
Oh, dearie me, I think that's so funny. You can see the look in your eye going, if I was out there, well, actually, maybe now, if it does go, I'm going.
Yeah, don't encourage me.
I think, well, I'm not sure you need much encouragement.
That's true.
Yeah, I don't think that you're going to be able to resist it, to tell you the truth, just by looking at the look on your face.
I know, that little competitive edge that she was talking about earlier. It's just working its way in there. So what is next for you, Illi? Are there any big climbs or virtual races that you're planning on the horizon?
Yeah, like I mentioned, I'd like to try and plan a trip to Angliru, if that's possible. Yeah, but we'll see if that comes together. In terms of virtual racing, I haven't got any plans so far. I'm not sure what the kind of big Zwift races ahead will look like now that we're, in the summer and there's like less going on in the virtual world.
I'm going to throw a few things at you then. British hill climb title this year?
it's such a short climb. I'm intending on racing the British Hill Climb Series and giving it a go. The course definitely doesn't suit me. It's, I think, about 2 minutes.
Where is it this year?
The Rake, I think.
Ah, the Rake. Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Some of them are very short, aren't they?
Yeah, I like the nice and long ones, but yeah, most British hill climbers, because there's
quite short.
So few big hills. Yeah.
So interesting. Okay, so what about the 2025 UCI Cycling Esports World Championship?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Your climbing could go down very well against Kate McCarthy.
I don't think I have a chance against any of the top. Can't compete with the top esports races anymore. I haven't really. I don't think I'll be trying to qualify. So I think it tends to be the same weekend as British Hill Climb Champs as well.
Oh, it's shifted this year.
Oh, has it?
15th of November.
Okay, yeah. So that's about 2 weeks afterwards, I think. So yeah, I'm currently not planning on qualifying or trying to qualify for that. I'll definitely be watching, because I think last year I remember watching it was the evening before British Hill Climb Champs, and I was like, in a hotel watching the race, which was super exciting being in person, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was. Chris and I were both really lucky to be there. It was absolutely fabulous. I do have one more, quite a wild card question for you, though, because we did talk very, very briefly, or I mentioned very briefly, numerous British female hill climb champions have been phenomenal cycling esports athletes as well. So yourself, Mary Wilkinson, Lou Bates, all have held that British Hill Climb Championship title. Well, Mary hasn't. She's been second so many times. But do you know what I mean? There's a real trend, in that relationship between climbing and racing. There's another rider who in the USA is absolutely dominating the outdoor hill climb circuit, which is one Kristen Kolczynski, who is also another phenomenal cycling esports athlete. Any plans on hopping across the pond to the USA to chase some of her QOMs?
I actually just forgot that I have an America trip planned. I signed up for... I keep forgetting about it because I kind of can't believe I did it, but I signed up for the Mount Washington Hill Climb.
I'll tell you what, I might be flying out for a small holiday to watch that one.
Partly because I've been wanting to go to New England for many years. But I haven't actually planned anything other than that. And I listened to your podcast with Kristen, and that kind of raised my awareness of the event. And I think that's in August, so actually not that far away, and slightly concerning that I
forgot.
I was just thinking, I don't know.
I've done the climb up Mount Washington 5 times. They call it the most difficult climb on a bicycle in the world, because of a number of things. Actually, the highest recorded linear winds in the whole entire were recorded on the top of Mount Washington. So there have been several times when it's been 80 degrees in the valley and gotten up to the top, and it's been snowing and the wind has been hurricane force. It's quite a test, and the run into the finale to the summit is extremely steep. And because they don't let you ride down, there are thousands of people there, and it's like a natural amphitheater of just people screaming and yelling for you. It's the greatest experience ever. You're going to love it, and you're going to want to keep coming back every year. And actually, because I know that you're going there and you'll be battling it out with Kristen, I might have to take the trip up to the White Mountains of New Hampshire to see it.
Yeah,
that would be great. So you've been so great, Illi. I want to just conclude by asking you a question I want you to give a little thought to, because it's more of like a philosophical, almost a hypothetical question, okay? But I think in a lot of ways, it kind of will sum up the way that you look at your cycling hobby. So Strava was launched in 2009. And since then, you've etched your name across the leaderboards of nearly every iconic European climb. And we're talking about those legendary ascents that serve as the dramatic canvas for the sport's storied and beautiful history. You've conquered real-world hill climb championships and claimed victory atop cycling esports' most celebrated summit, Alpe du Zwift. But one piece of the puzzle seems to continue to elude you, even though it's not something that you're targeting and never have in your career. But that is major climbing success in the professional peloton. With a resume that spans both the virtual and the real world, are you the greatest pure climber of your generation?
Oh, I definitely couldn't say that, no. I think that's something that can only really be seen, is only really appreciated in a road racing sense. When generally people talk about that, it's kind of within the peloton. So I find it kind of difficult to draw a comparison with like me going up and going for Strava segments with a peloton racing up mountains, which is, I think a lot of people scoff at kind of just doing one-off efforts and things like that. So yeah, I don't think I could say that. No. I would.
It's an interesting question, isn't it? Because we're speaking about just pure ability. You certainly have proven that. And we like to put our cycling into a road cycling shaped box. And that's one of the things that holds virtual cycling and cycling esports back as well. I don't know. I don't think that she's giving herself the credit that she deserves.
No, I don't actually, because it was so interesting just hearing you say that. So I could disagree with you completely. I actually think you don't have to compare your climbing ability with that of a professional road peloton racer, because they're two different things. You can be a hill climb world champion, like you can be a mountain bike XCE, XCO, XCC world champion. They're three different disciplines. And I think I love the fact that I disagree with you, and the fact that I personally think you are the ultimate female climber in the world.
Oh, thank you so much. That's really kind of you. I certainly wish there was the opportunity to kind of go head to head with all the other climbers of the world. Yeah, I wish there was more of a discipline in hill climbing like we saw with European Hill Climb Champs. I was hoping that would lead to possibly more events like that, possibly even UCI Worlds one day, but unfortunately it hasn't seemed to taken off.
Well, if the UCI are listening, the World Championship Hill Climb would be a great head-to-head.
That'd be wonderful.
Okay, so I think, do you know what? We're going to leave it there, Illi. I think the concept of you being on the start line, with Kristen Kolczynski from Mount Washington, is one thing we're going to look forward to, because we're going to be glued to those results. Chris might be there at the top cheering you and her on. The other thing I'm looking forward to now is the possibility of the UCI going, right, we're going to have a World Championship hill climb, and Illi Gardner can go head-to-head with the riders from the Pro Peloton. And that would be absolutely brilliant. I'm looking forward to that one already. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, you can subscribe to the Virtual Velo Podcast on your favourite podcast provider, and of course on YouTube. You can follow me, Emma Martin, on Instagram at biking_Emma, and you can follow Chris at the Zomunique. You can catch me putting words to the action this weekend on the My Whoosh Sunday Race Club. It is the May final this week. It's going to be a great one. And next weekend, you can find me voicing the Mountain Bike XCE World Cup, which is coming from the beer capital of Europe, Leuven in Belgium. Entries are still open if any of our cycling esports community like to mix things up a little bit with a bit of mountain biking. Emma Belforth, for example, took 11th place in the Swedish round of the XCE World Cup in 2022. There you go. Multiple sporting disciplines. Head over to thezomunique.com and please become a member of the Escape Collective to join the conversation and support independent cycling esports journalism. We will indeed have more interesting guests from the world of cycling esports joining us. And the list is long, including Ruvi CEO Peter Samek, the Masaka Cycling Club of Uganda, 24-hour virtual cycling record holder Matthew Lefthand is joining us alongside World Ultra Cycling Association Records Chair Larry Osland. Bike Terror as well. Founder Matt Gibbs is joining us too. Several other people are waiting in the wings. We have a number of Virtual Velo podcasts scheduled and waiting for you to listen. Thank you, of course, to Illi Gardner, the absolute climbing queen, for sharing her fascinating perspective, and to you, our listeners, for listening to the Virtual Velo podcast. Chris, as ever, will always remind you to please take care of your heart. Get a coronary calcium scan should you think you need it. Me, well, I'll tell you to stay safe, enjoy your riding. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.